What is interesting, the difference between the idea of Rome, of civilization, and the idea of ancient Greeks in relation with their civilization is that the Greeks people were always more closed than the Romans. In this sense, in fact, on the one hand, if we have to consider, for example, the idea of a relationship between other populations, in this sense, in fact, Rome, with particular the development of the Republic, beginning to conquer the other populations, developing in a sort of way a specific type of connections with this population, with on the one hand the idea of Romanization in relation with the idea of Rome. The population that had to become the part of the Roman Empire. On the other hand, in any case, the idea of a potential idea of participation in particular with the idea of empire. On the other hand, there is in Rome also the idea, in any case, that Rome decided to study, to connect itself with other cultures, in particular the Greek culture. This is really interesting because if we consider with this topic, after the Hellenistic period, after Alexander the Great, the Rome decided to take the ancient Greek culture into itself, in particular with the slaves. So slaves, ancient Greek slaves that arrived to Rome, and the Romans understood the importance of these slaves because they could use these slaves for the education of their sons. This is another topic really interesting because if in the ancient Greek society, in particular, it were only Greeks that educated the people, in particular the boys of the aristocrats of the aristocracy. In the case of Rome, instead, there is another type of situation in relation with the idea of education, because the education it was, according to the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic, developed by people who didn't were part of Rome in origin, but were part of other type of populations. This is really, really interesting point of view and topic that we have to consider and we have to reflect. On the other hand, there is, in fact, also the idea that, in this sense, for example, slaves in ancient Greeks were always slaves, and as slaves couldn't be a part of the citizenship of the city-state in ancient Greek society. Instead, on the contrary, in ancient Rome, in particular with this idea of slaves, there were some slaves that, in a specific type of situation, they became free in the sense because their lord, the people, the person in relation with them in their slavery, decided to free them, and then they could become citizens. This is really interesting because there is another type of difference that we have to consider between ancient Greeks and Romans. And in this sense, for example, the ancient slaves, the past slaves that then became free, uh, took the name of his ancient lord. This is really interesting to maintain the connection of the idea of the ancient type of lord. But in any case, we have to understand that there is another difference between Rome and Greece. And the other type of situation is that Rome decided to improve itself with idea of culture and with idea of languages. In fact, the Romans decided to understand and to comprehend and to study the other languages, in particular the language of Greeks. Greeks instead didn't decide to study the language of Romans. In fact, the Greeks maintained their close society relation with the city-states. And this is another type of topic, how the Empire of Rome maintained its force, its power during a lot of centuries, in particular between the 31 BC and the 476 AD with, yeah, with some crisis, with some territories that Rome lost in general, with different type of situations, with the division of empire. We know the division of between the East and the Western, in particular with the idea of a foundation of Constantinople by Constantino the First in 330 AD. But in any case, this structure maintained itself because Rome decided to, on the one hand, maintain the right and the law in relation with the structure of Romanization. On the other hand, because he decided to become an inclusive society. In fact, for example, the empire of Greeks, for example, the empire of Athens, had a specific type of time with a sort of important also connections with other Greeks, but also with other sometimes also barbarians. We know, for example, the relation between Athens and the city of Segesta during the Peloponnesian War. But in any case, this empire, it wasn't so big and at the same time didn't maintain itself for a long time. Not for maintain itself only for a sort of some years in any case. And if we have to compare the relation as a time between Roman Empire and ancient Greek Empire, Roman Empire won on the Greeks Empire. Uh, because in this sense, Rome decided to maintain its inclusion. Another type of idea of inclusive society it was, for example, the Persian Empire. Already that empire, it was a sort of used a sort of inclusive. In particular, we know that there were a lot of populations into the Persian Empire. And there is another type of consideration that we have to consider. In fact, the Roman Empire decided to took the Hellenistic idea of empire from the sense, the idea of Alexander the Great, but on the other hand, took the idea of Western civilization in relation with the idea of law. In fact, it's not a case that the idea of empire in relation with the idea of emperor, that it was that man that is a sort of divinity in the land and a sort of divinization of emperor. But at the same time, the idea, this is idea of the Hellenistic situation, the Hellenistic power, with some that rule and some others that obeyed to that rule. But on the other hand, the idea of Western power, that according to the Roman citizens couldn't be a sort of possibility of kingdom in relation with idea of people under this rule. In fact, the Roman citizens were only equal. And at the same time, the idea of citizenship developed itself for all Roman Empire. This is another type of topic really interesting. Therefore, the idea of situation and inclusive empires divided the two ideas. On the one hand, the idea of Hellenistic power and the idea of Western Roman power. And in this sense, this is really interesting that the Roman Empire maintained, therefore, with this structure, his empire for a long time. On the other hand, there is also the idea of influenced by Greeks, but Romans decided to be influenced. And on the other hand, the idea that Rome created a specific type of law with its culture and a law that it was a specific type of structure relation with its type of science. This is another topic that connect the idea of Hellenistic idea and the idea of Western Roman structure. Bye.